One of the hardest questions to answer with comics is a very basic one. Where do I begin? With so many ongoing series and years of continuity, finding a starting point can be difficult, and that's where this series comes in. Each week I look at all the new comics coming out, pick out ongoing series starting new arcs, notable new number ones, and trade paperbacks and graphic novels being released. Then I finish things off by talking about my pick of the week, the thing I'm most excited about. So let's kick things off by looking at ongoing series starting new arcs. We're going to start in the world of DC with Action Comics 1030, as Philip Kennedy Johnson continues his run on the character with art by Phil Hessler. This begins a new arc as villains from the Dark Knight's Middle Universe are coming back in a major way, and similar to last arc, these villains, maybe because they're from another dimension, seem to be impacting Superman in a way that he's not used to. His typical invulnerability is not there. We're seeing him becoming weaker and weaker, which ties into a lot of the fears that Jonathan Kent has been having. He's seen a future where Superman no longer exists, where Superman was killed. Are those fears now coming true? Is this the time in which that future is happening? We shall see. It does seem, since Philip Kennedy Johnson has taken over this title, that he's put a gigantic target on the back of Clark Kent, and that target continues to get bigger and bigger with each passing issue. Will it eventually lead to the death of Superman? Who knows? But if this is any indication, it seems like it is certainly heading that way. This also includes a new backup story focused on Midnighter, written by Becky Cloonan. So if you're a big fan of that character, who had a lot of good side stories in Future State as well, so I'm happy to see him come back, and he can be a character that can carry his own book. Unfortunately, we're not seeing that, but maybe if there's enough acclaim for this side story, we'll see that happening. But because if you do get the right creative team, it can be one of the best DC books due to the originality of the character. All right, let's switch over to the world of Marvel for Miles Morales issue number 25. Yes, the Clone Saga is returning, and this is written again by Saladin Ahmad, who's now been on the character for 25 issues. It is a bit weird seeing the Clone Saga revisited, considering that most have pretty negative feelings towards the Clone Saga. It's really kind of an ongoing joke in a way, but maybe that's the best thing to remake. Maybe that is the best thing to revisit, to look at an idea that maybe has elements of what could be great, and taking those elements and expanding upon them, thinking about something like the 90s Judge Dredd movie and how horrible that was. When we got the remake, it ended up being really great. It just took, what was really great about the character of Judge Dredd and made Karl Urban keep the helmet on, and we got a great movie. Maybe what this can do is take some good elements from the Clone Saga, because there are some good elements there. It just really got stretched out beyond repair, and being more focused, you don't have multiple series going out at the same time. You just have one comic, and maybe we'll get something fantastic about it. And if you're a Miles Morales fan, you haven't been reading the series, this is a good jumping on point, because I think they're really expecting new readers with this, because they've been doing a lot to promote it, which is something they really haven't done nearly enough for this book, considering how popular Miles Morales is. Just check out the video game and how many copies that sold. So now, if you want to jump on in a new series starring the character, you have the opportunity. I'm excited because one of my favorite current Marvel books, Black Widow, is now returning with issue number 6. I am a little disappointed, as Black Widow number 6 also has a new artist. Not saying this new artist is going to be bad, but it's going to be hard to top the art of the last arc. It's one of the best looking Marvel books in forever, and I'm excited that artist is coming back eventually. But for this issue, we're getting a new story with a new artist, and Kelly Thompson does a good job, I think, of teaming herself up with strong artists that can support her story. So hopefully it will look nearly as good. I don't think it'll be nearly as flawless, but who knows? We shall see. If there's an opportunity to make artists into a big deal, it's obviously on a Black Widow title, with the movie coming out very shortly. If you're interested in this as well, just recently the trade paperback of the first volume came out. I talked about it when it was released, so you may want to check that out first and then jump into this, because even though it is a new arc, I think that does a lot to set the new status quo for Black Widow, as she was dealing with the fact that she was brainwashed into believing that she actually started a family. And it was this cool little Twilight Zone episode in a way, with meshed with spy thrillers. It was really fantastic. It's a fun read, a quick read, but it's really deserving of your time. It's a lot to live up to for this arc, and hopefully it can do it. We don't know a lot about this arc. A lot hasn't been revealed. The major things we know is that she's getting a new suit, which is kind of cool. She's also in San Francisco, which is different compared to the majority of Marvel titles, which take place in New York City. So just by adjusting that setting, I do think you get a different feel, different take on the Marvel universe. As a person that did love Avengers West Coast back in the day, seeing any time that we do get some West Coast appreciation in the Marvel Universe is always a good thing. So I would advise checking this out if you're excited for the movie that keeps getting pushed back the more we talk about it, and you can't wait. This might be a good opportunity to get some experience with the character before we see that released in theaters or home video or on iPods whenever it does come out. Marvel's First Family is also getting a new arc this week with Fantastic Four issue number 31. And this sees Reed Richards and the rest of the Fantastic Four going someplace brand new they'd never gone before with the Forever Gate. And I am limited in my experience with Fantastic Four. I've read some stuff, but not nearly as much as many others. I have read a little bit of Dan Slott's run and I've actually quite enjoyed it. Like, I loved his Silver Surfer run, so I'm not too surprised that his sensibilities really work with these characters. So even if you're a person that maybe did not love his take on Spider-Man or maybe got tired of it, give it a chance. I think his voice is really perfect for this type of story. And also looking at the landscape of Marvel and considering this is going to be a new world that we're seeing, I do wonder what the impact will be long term. Think about all the different aspects of Marvel that were established in the pages of Fantastic Four, the Negative Zone, Galactus, the Inhumans. All those started, Black Panther. You can go on and on. Will this be something that is as enduring as those, that has the same level of longevity? I have no idea, but if you do think there's any opportunity or something to do that, to have that type of repeat success, it would be this story and it would be this book. We do get one indie comic this week starting a new arc, and that's Study Class number 45. And I do appreciate Study Class to a millionth degree because it really got me into a level of comics that I'd really never read before. I was really a Marvel head, a superhero head for such a long time, and reading a book like Deadly Class really opened my eyes. So I do have a very huge soft spot for this series, and I'm super excited for this coming back. I do know it's nearing its end. I'm super disappointed the TV show did not pan out because I thought it had a lot of great potential. I do think Deadly Class is one of the best books over the last decade or so, and it may not have the same notoriety that it first did or maybe be on the same level, but has been consistently good, as we saw just how much this story has evolved throughout the years. It's one of Rick Remender's best, and if you are enjoying something like Scumbag, you might actually quite like Deadly Class, so I'd advise maybe checking it out in trade or digitally. Now, do know that it's not necessarily as humorous as that book. It's much more serious of a tale, although there are some jokes. There's actually one issue that has a very large fart joke throughout it that actually sounds kind of juvenile, but is actually quite good. I almost put this as my pick of the week because I am super excited for it finally coming back, but my one hesitation was the fact that I've not read it in some time, and I'm also kind of lost of where we're at. So I'm going to need to go back and do a reread, which is always fun to do because it's always something that I seem to enjoy more and more every time I revisit it. All right, now that we talked about ongoing series starting new arcs, let's switch over to the world of new number ones coming out this week. When I talk about new number ones, I usually talk about the biggest book coming out, and I will say this is not a huge week for new series, but it is a pretty big week for ongoing series starting new arcs, which is very rare. It's the first time it's happened since I've done this series. But a big number one coming out this week is Robin number one, which is written by Joshua Williamson and with art by Glenn Melkenkoff, and I'm pronounced that name incorrectly. Most likely, I do apologize, but this is a story, again, about Robin, about Damian Wayne specifically. We have seen glimpses of this story. There was that backup in Batman recently, or Detective Comics, one of the two, that kind of gave you a hint of what this was going to be about. This story is going to be centering on Damian entering a Mortal Kombat-like tournament and trying to come out on top, dealing with the Lazarus Pit. So Damian has been hugely distraught due to Alfred losing his life. So he's actually been in the background a lot lately. We have not seen him a lot in the world of DC Comics. He wasn't even in Future State at all, so it made you wonder what exactly is going on. This is written by Joshua Williamson, who of course had that lengthy run on Flash during Rebirth, and now he's taking over this character. And Damian Wayne is one of those characters where I know a lot of people despise him. I feel like he can be a great character written in the good context or with the right writer, and I do think Joshua Williamson might be that person. Obviously, he took over Flash and did I think a pretty good job with that character. Damian is a very different take, but I often feel like people write Damian to the point where he's just so unlikable. My guess is with a series focused on him, that won't be the case. We shall see. But if you did like the story that was in the Batman comic recently and you wanted more of that, or if you're a huge Damian Wayne fan, this will be the book for you to check out this week. Also coming out this week is RWBY Justice League #1. And if you're like me, I had no idea what RWBY was, WRBY, and I was a little bit confused. I'm like, is that a character in the DC universe? I know I have not read every DC comic, but it's very much its own thing, its own fantasy tale, clearly designed in like the YA manga like style. And now we're seeing it combined with the world of Justice League. And this, again, to me makes a lot of sense. This is going to hopefully have some crossover appeal, especially for people that maybe don't necessarily read Justice League on a normal basis. They may not appeal to your older Justice League DC fan who's been reading Justice League for the last 20 years, but as maybe those younger readers that have not read a Justice League comic ever, maybe they'll check this out. It may not get notoriety as the same level as Batman Fortnite, because you're not going to get a secret code to unlock some sort of digital uniform. However, maybe this will get an appeal to those that actually like buy comics to read them and get exposed to a universe that you have never read before. I'm actually impressed with how DC is trying to do things like this, as Marvel as well, maybe not to the same extent with this and their YA line, realizing that they need to shake things up a bit and realize that they can't just keep appealing to the same people over and over again if they want the brand or these characters in this world to expand and have a future. So I think books like this are very vital. How successful will it be? I have no idea. Personally, I hope it's very successful, because it'll be, a success not only for DC, but fans in general, as well as local comic book shops, and hopefully get a new audience that doesn't necessarily go in their doors each week. One of the books I'm most excited about this week is The Marvels #1, and we've had a lot of Marvel series as of late. We had the last one, which was a bunch of mini stories from a lot of different creators, which had some of the best art I think I've seen in Marvel books. It helped that you had only mini stories to tell, so we actually got interior art from someone like Adam Hughes. That's not going to happen with this series, because this is an ongoing book, all written by Kurt Busiek, but it just seems incredible. It's supposed to expand the entire kind of landscape of the Marvel universe, from cosmic stuff to more personal stuff, from big stories to small stories, from Captain America to Western characters. Really, if it happened within the Marvel universe, it will be potentially taking place in this comic. What does that mean? I really don't have any idea. But if there's anyone who can pull that off, it is certainly Kurt Busiek, the man who made Marvels what it was in the 90s with the help of Alex Ross. We are getting Alex Ross covers. He is not doing the interior art, unfortunately, but doesn't mean the interior art won't look great. Art here is done by Yildirim Kanar, which is probably a name I'm butchering, and also a person that I don't know much about. However, I trust the art's going to be looking really good, because Kurt Busiek is really keen on having great art for his books and has a great eye for talent. I think we saw that with the Snapshots book. We saw that with all the talent that was cultivated for the last Marvel series. So my sense is we'll get that consistently. He's not going to be a person that just puts something out just because he wants to put it out. He has enough clout in the industry not to do that. And as someone who misses something like Astro City, which we haven't gotten to in a while, I think this is the closest thing we're going to get to it, knowing he's going to be able to play in the sandbox of the Marvel universe, but kind of do things that he would like to do without the worry of other continuity, other stories. So really excited about this book. It's probably a book that's going to go under the radar a great deal, because it doesn't necessarily do the greatest job of explaining what it is with the name and the title and the cover. But if you love old school Marvel, if you like that timeless quality of Marvel, this will probably be a book you want to check out. One of my favorite Valiant characters is coming back this week with Shadowman #1, and I'm excited about this for a number of reasons. Again, as I mentioned, I do love the Shadowman character. He's like Brother Voodoo, but with a Valiant lens, and has his own little type of world. He, again, is in New Orleans, so it's a different flavor as well. I'm also excited because this is written by Cullen Bunn, who is one of the best pure horror writers in the comic book world, probably in the last decade. Howard County, for example, that book is phenomenal. He knows how to write horror, both in the slow burn sense, the mind-bending sense. He kind of can get all the different flavors of that genre. He just gets the tone of horror really well, and he is able to, I think, establish horror stories that are very character-focused, where the scares are a benefit, but not the focus of the story, which will be something perfect for something like Shadowman. He's also obviously written much more than horror books. I like his run on Magneto, which is quite good. Highly advise checking that out as well. You also have artist John Davis Hunt, which I'm also really excited about, who's an artist I think should be a much bigger name. If you read the Wildstorm books that DC did a few years ago, which looked phenomenal, had great detail, really original designs, and now he's doing a Valiant book, which, again, is a win for all of us. And I know the Valiant universe can be somewhat difficult to jump into if you've never read them. I will say most of these series tend to be rather new reader friendly, so you often know new people are coming to to them, and they tend to focus on a smaller amount of titles that are very self-contained rather than a sprawling universe. So even if you've never read an Archer or Armstrong or another Shadowman book before, you can probably pick this book up not knowing that. If you are a horror fan and want more of that type of storytelling, if you liked Cullen Bunn's stuff before and want to see what he can do with a kind of a superhero twist, you may want to check out this book this week. Last number one I'm going to talk about this week is Snatch #1, and this comes from the world of Scout Comics. And when you look at the description, you look at the cover of this, you might be wondering, like, why is there a book about a barber? Why is there a book about hair? Seems like a bit of an odd choice for subject matter, but the more you look into it, that question shifts to, why haven't there been more comics about this topic? There just seems to be a lot of room here, a lot of story here to tell, as it's getting into some of the human rights violations, some of the horrible things people do to kind of look a certain way. And it doesn't take that long to look on social media just to see how materialistic we can be as people. And I think this will probably touch upon those as well. And in general, this topic that maybe really doesn't get the attention it deserves. Now, comics have been on the forefront of a lot of key issues throughout their history. And hopefully this will be another example of a fictional story touching upon a real idea that more people need to pay attention to. Let's switch over to the world of trade paperbacks and graphic novels, starting with Tower of Babel Deluxe Edition that's coming out this week. And Tower of Babel is probably one of the more iconic stories in the Justice League in the last 30 years or so. For those that don't know, this is a story where Batman's plans, his contingency plans of how to defeat the Justice League, are stolen and used against them. And it also, helps spur so many debates about why Batman can defeat anyone, because he always has these plans on how to take out people like Superman or what have you. And it gets into like putting the Justice League at a spot that they were not prepared for. We saw the animated movie as well. I think that touched upon this. I know many that point to this as one of their favorite Justice League books. We, of course, had the recent animated film about this as well, which maybe not be as good because it took some liberties with the story. But if you did like that and never read the story, now you have a new edition to check out. Also, if you have read the story and you love it and you need to collect every edition, guess what? You have a new edition coming out as well. So it does feel like it is one of those DC books that tends to get reprinted a great amount of times because there is a lot of love for it. So it's not necessarily like this is one that's hard to find. However, it is in a special format, so it will most likely include additional goodies and other things like that, and also look great as well. So if you want to check that out, it'll be hitting stores this Wednesday. Also coming out this week is Hellblazer Rise and Fall. And this is one of my favorite comics that come out last year from the Black Label line. I think it just ended this year, and it's focused on the character of John Constantine. Yes, last year we actually had 2 great John Constantine comics, which is odd to see because we have been waiting for having one good one for so long, and last year we got 2. Tom Taylor, I think, has the voice of John Constantine down really pat, and when you have an artist like Derek Robinson, it's also going to look fantastic. This was a much very different flavor than the ongoing series that Simon Spurrier did. This was much more along the lines of like Garth Ennis. It had that type of sense of humor. It felt very much 90s Vertigo. Again, probably because it was drawn by Derek Robinson, helped out a bit. But I just love the time it took to deliver these characters and not necessarily always focus on plot. That was there, of course, and we had this centered on this mystery of these billionaires that were literally falling from the sky, dealt with demon children. You had Satan, who was a main character in this, and when Satan's one of your more sympathetic characters, you're probably reading a John Constantine DC story. It was fun, it was funny, it was moving. It had like all the elements you want in a more mature type of tale that you would get for DC back in the day. So if you have not like dug how DC has been treating the character as of late in the the world of the New 52 or what have you, this is the John Constantine that made John Constantine into the character that he is, as best as anything that has been done for the character in quite some time. Let's continue talking about Tom Taylor with DC's Dead Planet hardcover that's coming out this week. And this, again, focuses on the DC storyline that came out last year, which was the second story, actually third story in the world of DC's. Technically, continuity-wise, it was the second. Anyways, it dealt with them coming back to planet Earth as they were searching for a cure for the disease that kind of caused all these people to become mummified. And DC's was the book that should not have worked. It should just be this Marvel Zombies ripoff, and ended up being much more. Now, this didn't get the notoriety or the sales of the original series, which was a bit disappointing because I think it was just as good, if not better. It is actually kind of impressive how much the DC world has expanded, because you have this book, you have other miniseries, you have the Digital First series. Tom Taylor has put a lot into this world, kind of creating it, putting all the dice together, kind of giving new pieces and being able to fill them in later. It's actually pretty masterful, all the ways that he has kind of combined and constructed this world. And I think this series, the Dead Planet series, really expanded the scope, where you even went off planet in a way, dealing with things like the new gods in some exciting ways. And the way it was kind of weaved in and out, he does a great job, I think, of introducing a concept that you maybe kind of forgetting about, and then here it comes back, and now we're dealing with something brand new. One thing too about this is that it's dealing with characters like Jonathan and Damian in the roles of Superman and Batman, and I thought it did a better job of approaching how they would take on those roles than something like Future State did only a few months ago, or really weeks ago. So also, if you're a person that maybe didn't think this story can continue and maybe didn't return to this, because a lot of people apparently didn't, highly advise checking it out, because I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with the quality of this book compared to the original. Also coming out this week is Static, and I don't know much about this book outside the fact that it is written and drawn by the artist of Crimson Flower, which is one of my favorite books to come out this year, and a big reason I love that book is because of the art. I'll preface it by saying it's an art style that may not click with everyone. It's a very aggressive style. It's, characters that kind of look ugly on purpose. It's characters that in a design that maybe not super appealing to the eye, but just the dedication to that look, how you'll just get these crazy angles and you're never bored by it. It's very dynamic in that way, both in character creations and rendering, as well as just general page design and panel layout. It's a very clever look. It has me excited for what this creator will do more. And this Matt Lesluski is the name of that artist, and I was hesitant to say it because I probably really mispronounced it and butchered it in many different ways. But he is an artist that is on my must-read list. Anytime I see work, I'm going to try to check it out. And this was the work he did prior to Crimson Flower that is now getting a release again. It came out in issues, and now we're getting it in complete form. So that has me excited too. Now, knowing that maybe because of notoriety of Crimson Flower, how well that's doing, Dark Horse saw that they had something special here, and let's try to go back to his earlier work and print that out as well. So if you're like me and love that book and want more like that, know that you have a trade paperback you can check out this week. All right, I talked about ongoing series starting new arcs, notable number ones, and trade paperbacks. Now it's time to talk about the thing I'm most excited about, my pick. As I looked at my pick of the week this week, it was a really easy conversation I had inside my head. It was basically a 1-second decision as I looked at the list of comics coming out, saw Ed Brubaker's name, saw Sean Phillips' name, and it's like, yep, that's it. And no disregard to any of the other books I talked about. Hopefully they'll be good as well, but it's hard to measure up to Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips, who have been probably the two most consistent creators over the time I've been reading comics over the last 20 years or so, doing some of the best things. And when they team up together, magic happens. As corny as that sound, it has been very true. And I'm so excited about it, I'm forgetting to even talk about what the name of the book is. And it's The Friend of the Devil, which is part of their Reckless line, which they recently started doing. And I'd actually would advise checking out Ed Brubaker's interview he did with John Salas on the Word Berlin podcast, which he gets into why they're doing hardcovers and not releasing things in issues, which is unfortunate. Like, I really wish we would get them in issues, but I get why they're making that decision financially. It just makes more sense to do it this way. We still get the same amount of book. There's just a lot of waiting in between. And there's something about like reading a single issue of Criminal that I really miss, and maybe we'll never get that again. But if this has been consistent as something like Pulp that was also released, which was like their first hardcover to kind of launch this idea, and if it's as good as that, it'll be potentially one of the best comics of the year. That is something that happens when you read an Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips book, is that it has the potential of being one of the best comics of the year. That's a lot of pressure to put on a book. That's a lot of expectations to put on something. But so far, they've really kind of pulled it off. I can't think of other creators that have been that consistent. Again, they don't necessarily do a huge amount. They'll have like Kill or Be Killed or The Fade Out or Criminal. And then again, now we're seeing them come back with a book like this. And it really shouldn't work, right? Because it's like going to the same sub shop every day, ordering kind of the same thing, but despite the fact that the ingredients are somewhat the same, you still love it. It's still as delicious as each and every day, and that's the case here. It's again noir crime drama, and they just have this knack for being able to approach ideas in great ways. It just things starts with character, the way they build characters, they make interesting characters, and then take crime tropes and mix and match them in new and unique ways. Ed Brubaker is probably my all-time favorite writer. And because of Captain America, because of this. So I can be maybe being a bit hyperbolic here. Maybe there's elements I'm not missing or overlooking or maybe overly praising. That can be the case. But also putting that expectations on something, and the fact that I often do that and they still succeed is another testament to their talent. And suffice to say, I'm excited for it. You can kind of tell that, right? It was one of my most anticipated books of the year, let alone this week. So of course it was my pick of the week. But that's it for me for this week. I do truly appreciate anyone that takes the time to watch my video. videos. Let me know what you're excited for in the comment section below. Just remember, comics are for everyone. The key is finding the right one. Until next time, keep reading.